name is Tim Kubarich, and I'm here today with two Harding Loevner healthcare analysts, Patrick Todd and David Glickman. Like in all industries, pharmaceutical companies have a choice when they're making strategic decisions about their research and development. They can conduct their own research and hope to find promising candidates from which to commercialize, or they can go to the market and acquire the research and development of other companies. How do pharmaceutical companies think about this capital allocation decision policy? And how does the inevitability of patent expiries and the resulting erosion in future revenue from those drugs factor into this equation?
A lot of that depends on the valuation of these companies. In recent years, the large pharma companies have said that a lot of these phase 3 assets, these are assets that only have one major phase of clinical trials left to go before commercialization, are very expensive and are actually overvalued by the market. So for the most part, we've seen few transactions in this area. What we've seen are more transactions earlier on where there's more risk of failure and where pharma companies think that they can add some value in their assessment and expertise of early stage pipelines. Investors had thought that with the tax reform in the US being passed here and a lot of cash coming onshore, that these large companies would buy a lot of smaller companies and we'd see this huge wave of mergers and acquisitions, and that hasn't really happened. And that's been good allocation on the part of the larger companies, not to say, oh, now that we have cash in the US, let's just spend indiscriminately. They've been just as discriminate as they were before that cash became onshore.
And I think there's also an element of how successful the current company is and how reliant they are on a single drug. So if you look at a company like AbbVie, which a few years ago was almost entirely Humira sales, that's going to eventually face biosimilar competition. So they needed to go out there and buy something very big that had a longer duration of growth. So they went out and bought Pharma, which is a company that had a product called Imbruvica for cancer, and that will help offset some of the Humira erosion that we see in the future.
How is the current mergers and acquisition landscape different than, say, 10, 20 years ago? And where do you think it's headed?
I think that the market has definitely changed. I think a lot of the deals you see today are about innovation. But if you look back to over the last decade, the mergers are really about bringing together these big companies and cutting costs and driving value through the cost savings. Today, it's about more innovation. So doing the partnership deals, focusing on the patient needs and the core therapeutic areas. So I think that the model has definitely shifted more towards innovation away from the cost cutting.
An additional interesting model that we'll see how it plays out is what Takeda has discussed at their most recent R&D day, where they've come to realize that a lot of their early research wasn't terribly productive, and they've signed about 200 deals with small, very early stage companies where they're taking equity stakes and they're funding the R&D all the way through. So it's kind of a VC outsourced pipeline model, if you will, and that's another thing to keep an eye on.